Right. Hello. Good morning. So I'm pretty pumped today because we're actually going to build something with this Bonsify tool. And just briefly, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's basically exploring a concept where state management is just one single primitive, and we avoid all kinds of like exotic abstractions, which actually includes even the class concept in JavaScript. We're just going to use objects and functions and see where that leads us, as kind of a pendulum swing from where we're currently at, where we have so many primitives and abstractions for doing state management. And do we really need to have that? So what we're going to do is, I have this app I built for the family, and it's actually a quite complex app. We're using Firebase, and we have like a shopping list here. We have checklists. We have the ability to plan the next week together, and we even have dinners in there. We're not actually actively using all these features, but it's a pretty complex app. And it's running on Next 13. So what I've done is I've created a new branch which is completely clean, and we're basically going to rebuild it. So this is running on Vite and latest Tailwind, and also I've installed Bonsify here. And one small thing we're going to do is move this thing in here, and then we're going to talk about that first. So let's see. So one thing that we talked about is like, how do we handle external dependencies? And from the documentation, maybe we can read the documentation next to this. How to, where do we have that? Do I actually have a section on that? I think I've forgotten to write about that. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of implicitly stating it here. So if you want your state management to access external dependencies, like in this case, Firebase, and I want to argue anything that doesn't have anything like explicitly has to do with your application domain, you should move that outside. So that means browser APIs, any third-party NPM package you're using, because those are technical solutions to a problem you're trying to solve in your app, right? And what you want to do is create an interface between this generic API that's technically solving something into something that's more in tune with what you're trying to solve in your actual app. The bonus of that is that you also get really good typing from that interface. So the way we're going to expose that to the application is by just passing it in. But before we do that, let's go in and actually make something happen here. So the only thing I've done here is that I've installed Bonsify, and I've added the bubble plugin. Maybe we can actually call this Bonsify. I've added the bubble plugin. It also has an SWC plugin. And then we have our app here, and we can just start playing with like a counter. And the only primitive we have available to us is reactive. And it doesn't really create an abstraction. Oh, interesting. What it does is just make objects observable by components. And the bubble plugin makes all components observers of state. So if we say counter count here and then on click. So I don't have to worry about anything here. I can just build up my components as normal. The bubble plugin will take care of the observation for me. And then we're good to go. And what we're gonna do here is, you might say that you should expose the state through like a provider. and not like import it directly. But I'm not writing any tests or anything in this app. Like if I were actually writing UI tests, I would provide the state through a provider to improve testability. But I don't care about UI tests. Like I could do a whole discussion on that. I favor like actual proper real environment end-to-end tests. That's actually tests that simulates what a user would do. I think that catches more of like critical flows and handles like external dependencies better, like instead of mock dependencies and all of this. But that's a different discussion. But you can choose, right? That's the point. Like, how do you increase maintainability and guarantees in your app? And you don't need special primitives or abstractions presented by tools. You can just use a context provider from React. Like that is an abstraction and primitive introduced by a tool, but like your state management tool doesn't need to do anything special. React would have to do that. And like hopefully one day it's actually possible to write this kind of code. Like I would love for this to be in the browser somehow, or some version of this, like component composition first class in the browser using JSX. That would have been amazing. But anyways, because React is one of those tool sets shoving a shit ton of abstractions and concepts and primitives in your face. Well, this is really what React does. It's just this. It's completely transparent. Like React is an amazing tool because this works. And everything else is just, for me personally, it's just melting my brain. Anyways, I'm talking too much, not coding. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna remove this and we're gonna create our state folder. And let's just do this. And then we're gonna let's see how we're gonna do this. So I think this is gonna act as the thing that kind of creates the state. So we can start with, oh, what's this? So we can start with family scrum, for example. I'm just going to start somewhere. I'm not sure how we're going to structure this. Okay, so we're going to export families, create family scrum. And this is going to take some utilities that we're going to use. But for now, let's just do, let's do hello world. And we're going to make this reactive. And then in our state here, we're just going to export state, create family scrum. Yeah, maybe we could even call it family scrum. That's a nice thing. Oh. Oh, cool. And then here we're going to say family scrum title. Did I say hello world? Yeah, I did. Okay. So again, like this is fine for this app because I'm not writing tests. And we've kind of already made it testable because we made creating the state a function. So by that fact, we have made our state testable, right? Because you can call this function as many times as you want. And since we're going to pass in any external dependencies, you can very easily mock those. And as you will see later, as we start like diving deeper into the state, those will also be functions that we call to get the actual state, where we'll pass in these dependencies again, which means that you can test isolated pieces of state, just like unit tests. But we're not going to do that. But the thing is, we're just going to import this family scrum object because that will represent the full state tree of our application. And if I wanted to test that with the UI, then I would start using a context provider from React, so that the React components aren't bound to this instantiated object. But I don't care about that for this application. Cool. So let's explore this use global context. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to rename this to utils. And I think, let's see. Yeah, I don't think, yeah, so what we're going to do, we're just going to export. How are we going to do this? Are we just going to export utils? I think we're going to do that. So we're going to have Firebase, but we're going to call it create Firebase. Then I'm going to have views, which is going to be create. I might have to change something here. We're going to explore it. So we have authentication. You can actually take a picture of your dinner if you want to do that. And we have the version management. There's a version management here, which checks for new versions. And then we're going to export type utils equals type of utils. Okay, so let's go in and check Firebase first. So, oh, why aren't those here? Didn't I install all of this? Restart TypeScript language server. That's weird. Where's Firebase? Why don't I have those? Oh, fudge. I forgot to move them. Because I created a brand new family. Sorry about that. I created a brand new headless UI React. I think we're just gonna, let's just install the latest versions of the dependencies as we find them. So yarn and Firebase app, or is it just Firebase? No, Firebase and Firebase, I think. Because I think Firebase includes all the other ones. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Restart. Okay, cool. So we're fine. So this actually has everything. And this is going to be create Firebase. And this sets up use device language. What's that coming from? What's use device language? Oh, is this? I hate this. I don't want this React hooks rules. You know what? One thing I don't like is ESLint. I really dislike ESLint. Because it makes more mistakes than it helps. Because when you have types and you have formatting, that's as far as I go. This linting stuff, I think it's completely overkill, but that's my opinion. Anyways, so we're setting up Firebase here. And Firebase is a very low level API. So what I'm doing is that I'm creating this utility here. And this is funny enough, the exact same pattern as we use for the state. It's just a function that returns an object. And this object represents all my utilities for Firebase, and there's a lot. It holds all the collections, it exposes all the types, everything. Type undefine. What's this? Why does it think it can be undefined? That's weird. It thinks data can be undefined? Why does it think that? Oh, I promise I'm not gonna get stuck in this, but reference data. Yeah, I'm not sure why. Huh, that's weird. Like, this is a type coming from Firebase to be used with update doc. Yeah, it's very weird. I don't care about that now. So here we have all our utilities for Firebase, and then we just create that. And then we have views, and I wonder if this is actually a state. Yeah, this is actually state. So maybe we can implement that first. So this represents the different views you can be in. It's kind of the top level state of the application. So we're actually going to start this whole thing with a state machine, because we're going to have different functionality based on what you're looking at in the app, right? So very typical for state management tools, or not state management tools, but the state management in general, is that you either decouple your state and your interactions. So that means you always have access to all interactions. But some interactions aren't valid in certain states, right? A very simple example is why you can sign in even if you're already signed in. But with Bonsify and also other state management tools, you bring like interactions and state together. And with a state machine, you're actually able to provide the valid interactions related to the current state. So if we're on the dashboard, there's certain functionality. If we're on groceries, there's certain functionality, and you can actually explore that in the actual state. So I'm just gonna make sure we have all. We're not gonna do views here. Create authentication. So create authentication. So this is just users collection. What's this cleanup? Oh, this is also using, I actually think this is also part of the state management. Yeah, because this is using Firebase. Okay. So this is not utils, this is actually state management. While use camera. This is interesting though. I haven't thought about like there's nothing wrong with you actually using reactive in an external dependency. Like, because you have a reactive solution that's going to consume it. So I haven't thought about that. Maybe you should try it. Okay, let's try it. So we're gonna bring back, sorry, create authentication. Create Firebase. Okay, interesting. So how would we approach this? We're gonna expose some functionality here, which is, yeah, it's basically the state. So what we have to do is, what about handle auth change? I just have to verify what's the actual functionality here. Yeah, I'm like, we just have to make a decision. No, we should explore this. Like, the way I thought about reactive is that, no, you use that primitive to build up your state tree, but it's such a low level primitive that you can literally use it for whatever you want. But I never thought about it in the context of what we're doing now, which is creating these utilities. How is this actually used? Okay, we're not gonna do it. Like, we're rather gonna do it from the other side. We're gonna look at the actual implementation, like the consumption part of it. And then, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you can have a reactive camera if you want to do that. It's very interesting. Okay, no, we're gonna do this. Okay, I think the authentication utility I had, that's really session management within the state tree. But the camera is definitely not that. But the camera is a really great place to start this actual refactor, because we're gonna describe these states as, let's see, we're gonna move these into their own separate states. So let's call it not started. And I'm gonna use current. Like, you can use so many different concepts. Like, you can use current, you can use state, you can use status, you can do mode. But I think current, it's the one that kind of encompasses everything, because status is very much like, a camera can have a status or a camera can have a mode, but you wouldn't say that about like a user necessarily. Like, a user doesn't have a mode, but current, like the current state of a camera, you can say that the current state of a user, like current is such a generic, nice word. So let's see. I'm just wondering how I should name this. Yeah, let's just do this. Current not started. Export type starting. And this is a good example of using a state machine, because this camera is actually quite complicated. And what we're going to introduce here now that we didn't have before is actual functionality related to each state. So captured, yep, and then we have export type error. Okay, so now this becomes the camera state. Does it fill it out? Thank you. Cool. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to create, this is just the types, right? So now we need to implement functions for moving into these states. So this is gonna move into not started. And then we're gonna have, what was it? Const starting. And then we have started. Oh, look at this. It's understanding it. Nice. Perfect. Capture. Oh, look at you go. Exactly. So what we're doing here is that we're creating the functionality for moving between the states. So not started, it's just like that. And if they need, like if we're presenting values moving into a state, that's just arguments to the thing. And then what we can do is we need to let's see. So we have start camera and capture. Those are the two things we have. And start camera would be here. Start camera. And capture would be here. That's when we can actually capture. And then we have, do we have capturing? No, captured. I wonder if that's async. And I wonder if you can start the camera again when it's captured. Or we could call it like reset camera or something. Yeah, let's just call it reset. Start. Capture, reset. Cool. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create the actual state of the camera. You'll have to excuse that this looks a little bit messy now. So this would be camera. That's a reactive. Let's see. Then it's going to start in a state of not started. And then we're going to return that camera. Cool. So the point is, when we do start, we're going to move the logic of start. Oh, we actually get an element ID on start. I didn't know that. String. We're going to review this when I'm done. Let's see. So when we actually start, we're going to say camera.state equals error. And then we're going to just pass that in. What are you complaining about? Oh, sorry. I know what's wrong. Camera equals state, camera state. I'm actually not sure how to differentiate. Like when I think about camera state in this context, that's like the different states it can be in. But the camera, yeah. No, I think this makes sense. Okay, so this is the camera. Now we can change that. We have the stream, so we can go to camera state started. Oh, what happened there? Oh, stream. And again, we can have an error here. Camera state error. And here again, we can have an error. Cool. And then for reset. Oh, interesting. Yeah. And we don't really have a concept of reset here. Yeah, I'm not actually sure how I do this in the app. Like if you take a picture and you want to take another picture, I have no idea how that's done. Maybe you can just capture again. Okay, let's drop this reset because we're actually not using it. So I don't want to make it more complicated than it necessarily needs to be. So reset, let's just remove that. But no. But you are able to actually capture. So let's just get this in here. I know refactors aren't the best way to like introduce things like new concepts because there's so much other fluff around it. But let's see. We're gonna actually build something, which is good. So capture. And then we have capture here. Now we don't need these things because it's already typed. So that's also a thing here. It's like with, we've been talking about classes. So one negative part of classes is that well, positive and negative. Like with a class, your class becomes the type, right? Here we had to actually create an explicit type of camera. Well, if it was a class, you would just use the class, right? But the negative part is, and like also a good thing about classes is that you don't have to type all the properties and the methods separately. You just type them in the class. That's great, right? You'd save some time, I guess. But the negative part is when you actually read the class code, there's a lot of type definitions there. So it becomes like there's a lot of fluff in a class. You really only care about the logic and the properties and the methods, but you get like method argument typing, you get property typing, you get public, private, and all of this stuff, the fluff that you don't really care about reading the code. Anyways, so what's interesting here is in this context, you're always started, right? Because we put capture on the started state. So you can't, we don't need to check that. But camera.state is error. And then, yeah, so here we can just say this.stream. Yep. And then we can say camera.state equals captured. And we pass in this.stream. And then, oh, you had it. Thank you. Cool. Starting. We aren't using starting. I think, oh, maybe I missed that actually. That's also interesting. It showed me that I was missing a state. There we go. Cool. So let's summarize this. I'm just gonna put on some more music. I need some lo-fi chill. So what we did now is that this camera is quite complicated or complex because it starts out as not being active, and then it's asynchronously starting, and only when it's started you can actually capture anything. And then you have a captured state, like you actually took a picture, right? And currently I'm assuming that you can just, like, we don't want to do it again. That's something we can explore later. Like, how do you actually go and take another picture? Or it can have an error for many different reasons. So that's our camera state. And then we have the camera itself, which could have had its own like values here. That's unrelated to any specific state the camera is in. So when we create the camera, we create these functions that represents each of the states of the camera. And what we can do here is like we can extract these functions here so they aren't like inlined like this, to make it more clear that we're creating these different states. So maybe we could do that. So we could try to, for example, I wonder if we can actually just do this. So we have, well, the challenge is, yeah, we could do, okay, we're going to do something here. So we're going to say start, and then we're going to put the start down here. It's called function. Now we have to do a string here, but that's fine. Oh, did I take too much? Oh, start. Oh, sorry. There we go. So what I'm doing now, I'm just making these states more explicit. So capture, we're going to move capture as well. Capture. And with a class, you would make these functions private, right? Yeah, I think we should pass in the stream here as well. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah. Yup. It needs access to the stream. How would you do this? Oh, you know what's interesting here? We don't actually care about this stream. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, I think we're kind of getting stuck in reflecting on state machines. Yeah, we don't really care about this stream. This is interesting. Because the stream is an internal thing. The reason I previously added the stream to the state was because I needed to reference it, but from the other functions. But now that the functions are part of the state, we can rather say, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this, but what we can do, we can bind the stream to capture. So what that would mean is we could do this. Oh, but we don't need the stream here. Sorry. Wait a minute, this becomes much simpler. Where do I need the stream? Started? Where do I actually need the stream? Oh, no, I remember. We need the stream. Sorry. We do need the stream because the stream is what we use with the canvas, I think. Sorry about that. You know what? I'm going to do another stream because this is ridiculous. We were supposed to build an app and I'm stuck in like creating these utilities. So I gave a false promise here. I think this is very interesting as well. Like, how do you actually manage complexity like this? But it wasn't the promise of the stream. But yeah, so let's just continue. But we're going to do another stream where we actually have our utilities so we can focus on actually building the state tree of the app. But yeah, what was I going to do? So what we can do here, we can do capture, and we can bind the stream to capture. Can you help me, please? I can't remember the name of the type. Please? Come on. Up. Media stream. I don't like this because now we're binding the first argument. I don't like that at all. I think doing this kind of thing. So the easiest thing is to just have the function in here, but I don't think that's very readable. So what I would want to do is yeah, what would I want to do here? This is becoming too convoluted. How would you have a pattern to efficiently? Well, okay, one interesting thing we could do though. We could do this. Oops. Maybe that's the cleanest way to do it. And the reason that I'm messing around with this is because now we're making these functions available in the context of the state. But when we move them away from their state into separate functions, they lose that connection, right? So we have to type back in that connection. And there's two ways to do that. We can like just make them completely decoupled and we pass in whatever they need, or we can actually couple them back to their state, which we're doing here. We're saying that this is actually part of the started state. And if I said like not started here, like it would start to give me errors that it's not valid. So I think this is how I would solve it. Anyways, so what we're seeing now is that we see like clearly how we're moving into these different states and what they're providing. And then we have the actual functionality. And what's nice about this is that some functionality might be valid in multiple states. So that makes it very, very easy to build that. And then we just create a camera and we return it. That's it. Morning, Adam, by the way. Cool. But as I said, like this camera is surprisingly complex. But now from a consumption standpoint, like in the actual components, this is going to be amazing. Like you can imagine you just switch on the current state and then you're given like, this is what you have access to. Like this is the actual state which decides like what UI do you want to build around this. And then for each state, you get the exact values you need and the exact functionality you need. And this is how I always thought about like teams. Building complex applications is having the possibility for some engineers to work on this kind of thing, like the complexity of the states, and basically building an interface for the UI developers, because UI is complex enough in and of itself, like building a great user experience in terms of the actual UI. So you have like from the point of state consumptions to providing a great experience, that's enough for an engineer to care about. Because there's a lot to care about there. But what happens here is that you're giving these, I think it's a source for great collaboration, because all engineers are in the team are like talking about the final user experience, and like everyone should talk about that. Like even DevOps should talk about that. But when it comes to, okay, we're going to build this thing, then yeah, one engineer can go in and build up, just like a backend engineer builds an API, a REST API for a client team. I think about the same for state management because it's so complex. Like state is like an API for the UI. Wow. Yeah, it is. That's how I think about it. So by doing this, you're kind of thinking about this root state as like the endpoint for state that you provide to the components, and then people like engineers that really loves and creating a great UI and user experience, they get this like amazing API to work with. And then you can do it in parallel. So one engineer like works on the actual UI, just mocking the state. And then you have another engineer implementing the complexity of moving between these states. I think that's a lot of fun. I worked like that a few times, and it's a lot of fun, and it's very efficient, and it creates a lot of shared ownership, and like not for well, it kind of forces collaboration and interaction between engineers, which is a good thing. Anyways, so I'm happy with the camera. I'm gonna document this, by the way. And again, the reason I'm using this here is because that represents, I could have done so I could have done if camera.state current not equals to started. I could have done this instead. And then this would point to, oh, that's interesting. This becomes any. Ooh. That's a footgun. Sorry, camera state.stream. I could have done that, right? So I'm just saying that this function is only valid in the started thing, but that's very implicit. Like you have to find it in the code, and it gives an actual error in that will never happen. So I do like what I did better. I just don't like that it defaults to typing it as any. So it's a footgun, but all typing can to some extent be a footgun. So I wonder if you can do, I know we're getting stuck on this, but can TypeScript type this as undefined by default? I love that they're exposing the reasoning now. Good job, DeepSeek. Though it defaults to any, which is scary. Can I make it default to void instead? Which is scary. The user asks if they can make yeah. No implicit, this flag isn't, okay. TypeScript doesn't provide, however, you can catch an intended use of implicitly typed this by enabling no. Yeah, interesting. I'm gonna, sorry, we're completely getting out of, where's the actual config here? What happens now? What does that do? You know, a no typer will issue an error if this is used in a function without an explicit type. Well, that's not true. Is this like a hallucination or something? Well, it doesn't work. Is it because... Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna try to add it to both of them. Oops. Interesting, it doesn't work. Anyways, that is interesting. If the this is used in a function without an explicit time. Oh. No. It doesn't work. Oh, I can't believe it. I'm stuck on this now. No. Is it a... raise errors on these expressions with an implied anytime. Maybe it only works for... Yeah. That's weird. It should do this. Default true if strict. Okay, if it's strict, it's true. Huh. That's weird. That should have caused an error. I think there's a bug. That's interesting. Because that should... Yeah. Anyways, let's just continue. That's weird. Let's see. And then we have version. Let's look at version. Yeah, this is also... So this is very interesting because in a lot of utilities, like if I weren't going to use reactivity here, it means that yeah, it means that I would have to like I think I would have written these utilities differently in this context. But so for example here, I would just expose fetch version, right? And then I would, in my state, in my actual state implementation, I would like fetch version and actually implement the state for it in there. So we're actually going to do that. So create camera. So the only real things here that are like external dependencies is Firebase and the camera. That was a long journey for something so simple. But we got an opportunity to really dive into like the complexity of something that actually has state complexity. And yeah, you can argue like, yeah, but I could have handled this inside the component. Yeah, you could. But nobody would be able to understand understand it. Like there's a lot of assumptions made, like even just all the different error states here. Just being able to, like, it can get into an error state by how many ways? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 different ways it can get into an error state. Imagine putting that into a component and then pointing directly to navigator, making it untestable unless you like use some like node DOM kind of thing. At least increasing complexity in testing. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, but what we can do now is that if we wanted to actually test this, we could just create like you wouldn't even create a camera in the tests. you would just mock out the current state of the camera. And then you could mock the capture or mock the start, for example. You can do whatever you want, which is a great thing. Okay, cool. But I am curious, like, how would I actually do this if I did it from scratch? I wonder if I would rather make this utility the start and the capture function. And then the actual state management of it would be inside the state tree. I think I would have done that. Actually, I think we're gonna move that. Because the only thing I want to do with my utilities is to not expose like external browser APIs or npm package APIs. And for Firebase, that's like, it's an external package, and here it's using DOM APIs. So I think we can do that. Yeah. So maybe we should refactor that. Okay, cool. So we're gonna implement like the root state of the actual application, which would hold the views. We have the session, like we need the session first because you can't start the app without the session. And then we have the camera, but the camera is actually bound to the dinner view. Yeah, this has been interesting explorations. But yeah, I think I want to do like start a new stream, and then because I wasn't prepared for this. Like if I've done it from scratch, it would have been different, but we're refactoring like a bunch of assumptions made with a different tool. So it gets very confusing. Even though it's like a good learning, it's not just like, we haven't really used the tool like Bonsify at all here. We're just refactoring. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make the camera just start and capture, because those are the actual things that's using the browser APIs. And then we don't really have to care about the camera yet, and we don't have to we can just start at the beginning, which is the authentication. Okay, so what we're gonna do before I quit is we're gonna erase everything we've done now, and then we're actually gonna implement the first piece of state. And that is authentication. And the point is that we're gonna pass in utils here. And can't you find it? Where did I put the utils? Oh, did I put it out? Wait a minute. I didn't put it outside of the source, did I? Oh, must be inside the source. Sorry about that. That's why I couldn't find it. There we go. So we're gonna pass in the utils here, utils. And then what we're gonna do is create the initial state of our application, which is tied to the authentication. Like some applications allows you to be unauthenticated and authenticated, but this app doesn't allow you to be that. So we're gonna create a new file called session. And then we're just going to paste this and we're going to refactor this. So I'm going to change this into authenticated. We're going to use current again. And then we're going to have unauthenticated, which is current unauthenticated with reason string. Oh, we also have authenticating. So then we have session state. And then we have session, which basically is the session state. And then we have authentication cache key. Oh, we're using local storage here. That's why it was in the utils. Like, yeah, this is interesting. I don't think I really thought about this previously. It was probably because I refactored this app so many times that even the previous refactor was including some assumptions made with the different tools. So I would make persistence like a utility. Yeah, I would make persistence utility. But we have users collection, families collection. And then let's see here. I think it's fine to bring those out. And then we're going to do authenticated. Cool. Let's do unauthenticated. It's really nice to have this stuff. Authenticating. That's nice. What is interesting about this, though, is that it's only when we're authenticated that we're actually going to render out the app. So this is going to be a reactive. We're calling this session. This is session. We don't need to clean up this because you never. I'm going to return session. And this is a handler for dealing with the state changes. So cached authentication. Oh, interesting. So this will be authenticated or null. So what we're going to do here, we're going to say, let's see, state is, oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry. But this is also interesting because authenticated will... Yeah, I wouldn't cache the whole... I want to say... What was it? User? Yeah. Family DTO. This is what I'm going to cache. Because this also changes now. So if we have cached authentication, we're going to say authenticated and we're going to pass cached authentication, or we're going to say unauthenticated. I'm going to refactor this local storage thing. Oh, maybe that's because the strict thing didn't work. Good point, Adam. Look at that. You're a smart dude, Adam. Thank you. Now I can sleep through the weekend. Exactly. So this would actually... Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, then I think this is totally valid. You have full type safety of this, and you're actually describing that this function is part of these states. Makes a lot of sense. Handle off state change. Where was that? Where was I actually using that? Handle off. Oh, it should be Firebase. Okay, so we're gonna change that a little bit. Because the thing we're doing now, this is something I haven't actually been able to do before, which is to actually make sleeping for all. What I haven't actually been able to do before is to actually put the app behind the authenticated state. That's what's actually Impact was trying to solve, is like, how do you think about that? And with Impact, you would just move your state into authenticated, and then there was a component that would actually be responsible for exposing a new store through a provider. But in this case, we're actually going to put the dashboard here. We're going to create the dashboard as part of the authenticated state. So we're going to see how we do that and just make a mock dashboard. And we're going to shove this stuff into the actual thing. Yeah, so authentication here is a little bit complicated because, or complex. I say complicated all the time. And the reason is that a user isn't just a user. It's also tied to a family. So whenever the authentication changes, we need to, this is going to be async. We need to actually go and grab the family as well. So let's move that back up here. And then let's have a look at this. So what we can do now is say, we're going to say session.state equals authenticated. And you are right, sir. And here we're going to actually stringify user. Oh, interesting. User and family, and this is great. But yeah, as I said, we're going to make this an actual utility. And then this is going to be session.state unauthenticated with nothing. This should have, yeah, reason string. Sorry, I forgot about that. Or the AI forgot about that. It wasn't my fault. So this is cleaning up nicely. So here we're going to say session.state equals unauthenticated. Like the big question for me will be, oh, it actually starts in, it actually starts in authenticating because of this thingy. Maybe we should move this. There we go. It's like, how would someone actually approach this? So if you were to like dive into, oh, am I still showing? Oops, sorry. No, I removed it. So that's kind of the big test, is like, when we're done with this, push it and like ask someone who's never used the tool before to figure out the state of this. And that's different now. It's like with something like Overmind or Cerebral or whatever, the code becomes is declarative because we're splitting out like state from actions. So you kind of just describe this state tree, but at the same time, if we actually want to handle these, so this is optimized for consumption. So when you actually go into component and point to the state object, it's going to tell you everything. But when you go and read the code of the state, like doing the state machines to enable that, it's going to be more, it's not declarative, right? That's what we're kind of throwing away here, declarativeness. So if the state is simple enough, it can still look very declarative. Like you're able to define the values and the functions or methods in the same object. But like in this case with a state machine, we really need to handle it like this. So it is definitely clear what states you can be in. And there's complexity here that needs to be managed. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, how would I split this up to make it like cleaner? Yeah, I'm not sure if I would want to do that. Because like if you're wondering about something related to the session, you will go to session, right? And it does describe very explicitly the states it can go into, the values it uses, how the detection of authentication changes, and that's like super clean. And then that it uses a cache, like, yeah. It is super clean. What I do wonder though, that we're gonna explore now is like, okay, so we're gonna have this session. Create session. And that's gonna take, I think we're just gonna use utils here. So we say Firebase utils. So this shows you how you pass these dependencies, how you pass these dependencies into like nested concepts. But the question is, what do we do now? Like the dashboard is only available when you're in an authenticated state. So we can solve that in two different ways. We can give it like a callback. So we can say create dashboard here. So that when you're authenticated, we're going to create a dashboard. And then you know that by looking at this thing. Or we could dive into the session and we could just create the dashboard right here. That will also be possible. And that's just an opinion. But I do think I like just doing it, because when you look at like, okay, this is family Scrum, it all starts with a session for this app. So you move into the session. And then there's like a lot. Yeah, I think the thing I feel like I'm missing is that when you open the app and you kind of see like everything building out, like the dashboard, and you're kind of looking for the dashboard. Well, of course, we're going to have a dashboard here. So in that sense, you know exactly where to go. But how is that dashboard created? If you go to Family Scrum, you can't see it. So there's this implicitness of the dashboard being created from this session file. And it's kind of hidden with all this it's kind of hidden with all this logic related to the session. So in that sense, I think it's better to like there should be some indication that we're going into, yeah, it isn't, yeah, exactly. I agree. It isn't really external. It definitely is part of creating an authenticated session. So, but I think I'm trying to give some sort of hint to that the session is actually going to create nested state. But you wouldn't do that for something else, right? If the dashboard actually creates, like the dashboard is going to also have different states, right? Well, sorry, no. The dashboard is like one state of the app, and then groceries is a different state. It's not nested in the dashboard. It actually replaces the dashboard. So dashboard is just one of many views. But my point is, inside the dashboard, we're showing like the event calendar. Like we're showing the calendar here. And that's nested state of the dashboard, right? That's just makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't necessarily make that much sense that the dashboard is part of the session, for example. But let's just go with it. Like, everything's just nested state, right? So what I'm going to do instead, we're not going to even do dashboard. We're going to do views. That's the next thing. So we can actually, oh, that's very interesting. So the session is going to create the views abstraction, because the views, that's what decides, maybe I should have a different name for it, but that's the thing that decides if we're showing the dashboard or any of the other things. So let's go and grab this one and let's implement that as well. And I don't think like create views. Yeah, that's also just a simple state thing. So communication between state machines. Yeah, so it depends on where the other state machine lives. But if you want to have one state machine, so let's bring up the docs. Well, actually here. So if you have one state machine that's part of the same domain, then you just point to the state of that domain, and then you check that other, like you use it like any other state. Like it just happens that the state is a state machine. So it basically has a current property that you need to check to figure out what you want to call in that other state machine, as if you called it from a component. Yeah, so at least in this concept, I don't consider like communicating across state machines is any different than communicating with any other state. But then you can have concepts like you can have a state machine within a state machine. And what I wanted to point out is accessing parent state. So in Overmind, for example, in Overmind, you always point to the root state, right? That's like an internal mechanism. So you don't have to think about how you actually access the root state from a nested state. But here you can't do that, because that's a built-in mechanism of Overmind. So the way you get access to parent state is by using the same mechanism as we did with utils. Only that this is actually tricky to access something that creates you. Like what creates the nested state is the parent state. So if you want to pass the parent state to the nested state, it doesn't really work, right? There's a catch-22 there. And with classes, that kind of works out of the box because of constructors. So in a constructor, you have access to the this while it's creating the class. So if you have an nested class, you can instantiate that passing in this, and then the parent class is created, right? But in this concept, you are creating some nested state and you want to access the app in this case. And the way you handle that here is that when you create the app, you make the nested state a getter. And then you just set it as a variable. That's how you handle it with a pure object. So it's just a pattern. But in case of like, if you have a nested state machine that, or any other state that needs to interact with anything parent, you just pass the parent down. But then the parent needs to expose the nested state through a getter. But yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things that's like, even though having that special constructor is like an abstraction kind of thing, it's more intuitive, I think, having a constructing function. But then you get all the other stuff with classes. Where were we? Let's see. So this will be utils Firebase. Yeah, so some of these actually has, so we're gonna actually call them what they are. Dashboard, current dashboard. Oh, I wish I could like, oh, we're just gonna do it. Grocery shopping, export type, checklists. So the point is that these views, they might be, they will be created with additional state. Let's see, plan next week. We're gonna fix that. I'm not sure what that sub view is. I'm gonna fix that. Dinners. Edit dinner. Current views, edit dinner. There might be a dinner there. And then edit to do. I'm not sure if all of these actually make sense in this context, but we're gonna figure that out. Cool. Create views. And then we're gonna do exactly the same thing. Grocery shopping. What was it? Checklists. Look at you go. Checklists. Plan next week. Oh, no. Did I ruin it for you? This is pretty cool. It's really nice. Like, I think, yeah, AIs are great for refactoring for sure. So this would be reactive. So it always starts with the dashboard. So this is view state. views is state, view state. And here we're gonna have push. Oh, this is interesting. So we're pushing. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I don't think we should have this generic push. I think we should rather have like open dashboard, for example, because they have different things they need. So for example, do we have, where's the app? So yeah, I guess you don't really see it here. Yeah, you don't really see it here. But one thing is, yeah, but this is interesting because this is more like, yeah, I wouldn't do it quite like this. So the dashboard is the actual view of the dashboard. Yeah, I don't think this actually makes any sense. So what I would rather do is like current. Yeah. So dashboard, for example, sorry, I'm going to remove all this. Current would be create dashboard. And then I would, let's see, turn views. Yeah, you know what? We don't even need to do this. Export const, create views. Nothing. Current create dashboard. And then we have open dashboard. So you can do this at any moment. So you can open the dashboard. And then we have all the other things. Oh, interesting. I forgot about this. So you can actually push down views and you can replace them and you can pop them. So in this context, like it works differently. We're just keeping track of like what's the current view state we have, but enabling those different view states requires different arguments. So for example, when we create the edit to do view, there's a different. Yeah, I really don't like this format of refactoring because there's been made so many assumptions about. So there's nothing to really get from this until it's done refactoring. So I'm wondering if it's better to just. Yeah. Yeah, I have to think about this. Yeah, so how would I do this? Like, so I guess this is a tricky thing. Like when you bring, if you separate state from functionality, it's easier to do things like this because now the views are just state. And then we can have like push, replace, pop, just interacting with that array. Super, super simple. But now that the views actually represents the actual state with its functionality, you can't pass in the view anymore, right? You kind of have to pass in this other object of, well, okay, sorry. I don't think this, yeah, sorry, this wasn't so bad after all. So we can keep this. Sorry. It's just what we use them for that's different. So we still have these views and we still push and everything. We still push these things. Let's see. Let's remove this. But what we're gonna do is return views. So we just need a stack, view stack. So these are like so this would be the current stack is name dashboard. Is it name? Oh yeah, okay. And then we're just going to create the dashboard. So this is our initial state. And then we don't need all this stuff. Now we can just do view stack dot push view. Yeah, and then we have function open view. Set current view, I mean. View stack, and then we switch on the current view. And if it's the dashboard, we are gonna say views.current equals create dashboard. So these act as like arguments to the views we want to create. So we just push the thing. Where are we? And then we say set current view. And when we replace, we're gonna do view stack and then set current view. And when we pop, we do view stack pop, and then we set current view. Oh yeah, get current view I think is better, because then we just do get current view, and then we say this current get current view, get current view. Okay, so this view here just represents like your navigation. It's almost like routing, right? Even with routing, and these are like the query params, but they're actual state. So you don't have to do like dinner ID, for example, but you can just pass the dinner. That's fine. Yeah, that's also going to be interesting to see what we're going to actually do with the data here. We'll figure that out. And then we have the dashboard, which is export, create dashboard, reactive. And then the actual type for the dashboard would be export type dashboard. Goes return type of create dashboard. Well, I guess dashboard should like be actually typed. So like so. So now we have dashboard. Okay, so what's interesting about this app is that it, first of all, depends on the session, and then it has a root concept of views, which acts like a stack, and that's what we're seeing here. So any view can like pop off the stack to go back, or it can replace the current item on the stack. It's kind of like almost like a native type of navigator. And then we have this thing that builds up the current view. Then what's going to change here now is that like these different current views, they are going to actually have all the functionality needed. One thing that's like quite a consequence of this is going to be nested components. That's going to be, because now any nested component in a dashboard, they don't know that they're in the dashboard state. And that's the thing you do with context. With context, what you do is that, so for example, with context, you would have like a views component that switches on the current view. And then for each view, you would create a new context. And then you have a use dashboard, for example, in those nested components. And that's kind of bound to the context. So if the context doesn't exist, like you use the hook in a bad component, then you'll get like a context error. And you can do the same thing here. Like you can have a use dashboard that just checks the, like if you expose the state on a context, you can just use the root state. You can make the check for that state. Like, are you authenticated? Are you currently looking at the dashboard? And then return that state. So that's perfectly fine. But what I'm thinking about it's giving an argument that you really should expose state on a context regardless. Just because then you're using hooks instead of pointing directly to the state. So one argument for using context is for testability, if you want to test components. But another argument is if you have state machines or you have explicit states, because then you want to use hooks to do, well, like you don't need a context. You can still do it like, so for example here, I can say export function use dashboard, or export function use family scrum, or even not that, like use session, where I would just return family scrum.session, right? Yeah, export function use views return family scrum, like if family scrum.session state wait, what happened? Oh, did I call it state? Sorry. Equals. Wait, what happened here? Why can't I dot into it? Session state. Oh, look at this. is supposed to be current. Was that the reason? Oh, there we go. Okay. Is not equal to authenticated. Throw new error. Valid use of views or whatever. Or then we can say family scrum session. Yeah, so this is supposed to have the views. We just haven't added it yet. One thing that's really annoying to me is with the state machines, you can't really like ideally you would do this, right? This would make more sense. But because you can't like replace the object, you have to replace a property on the object. Like state machine states are like immutable or like replaces the whole object because the new object represents a brand new state. You can't have, because we're returning the session object, right? And if we wanted to update that session object, we can't update a returned object. So we need a property, and that makes sense, a lot of sense if you actually have other properties, like the session could have some properties that's irrelevant of the current state of the session. But let's put the views in here. Let's see. I was gonna have authenticated, we're gonna have, and then we're gonna have views. And then we're gonna views, create views. We're gonna give it the utils. Didn't I call it views? Or are you failing? Oh, it doesn't take that. I think we want them though. So let's do it. Where's session? Where are your? Oh, I have so many files open. Oh, did I put it on the wrong thing? No. Oh, sorry. Why are you? Oh, sorry. This is current. But why are you complaining? Dashboard? Oh, sorry. Current, we have push, view, we have replace, view, and we have pop. And this returns a view. Oh, sorry. It's because... oh, wait a minute. This isn't correct. I changed this. So this doesn't return... Yeah, sorry. I should have like export type. Let's just call it view instance. You know what? We're gonna call this what we're gonna call it. Like this isn't the view. This is the view, the actual dashboard. This is just describing like this is the navigation. Let's just call it view navigation. So we're gonna have a view stack. Get current view is gonna be an actual view. And then we don't need these. View navigation. I should find a better name. And then view is dashboard. Yeah, so we are allowed to have undefined. What I don't quite understand here is that I thought, like, since this is oh yeah, sorry, of course, because we're going through the, like, we don't have a match here, like we're not handling all the cases, so it's undefined. And let's just comment out the others in the meantime. There we go. Again, refactoring. There we go. All right. Let's remove that one. Let's remove views. Okay, so we're going to try to summarize a little bit what we learned here. So one thing we learned, yeah, and now we can do this one as well. We used views, and then if not views dot, this is interesting. There's this relationship. This is very interesting. It's like there's this relationship between the view, like the actual navigation, and then there's the instance related to that navigation. Like, how do you model that? Oh, you know what? I think this is how we need to do it. So view. And then we don't have this. Oh yeah. So we have the view, and then we have view navigation is the view, but without the actual view. So whatever properties we add here, and then but this is like, yeah, this is getting more complicated than it should be. State machines are hard. Like, it's very difficult to, I find this very funny. Like, conceptually, it's so easy to communicate that my application starts with a session. If you're authenticated, you'll get, it can represent one of multiple views, right? Very simple concept. But expressing that in actual code, like, and you can say, yeah, you can just use a router. Yeah, and you can use a router for that. But why is it so difficult to express it in pure types, for example? Like, if it's declarative, then it's simpler. But now we're not declarative anymore. Like, we're not just describing the state, we're also describing like the instance of the view. It's very interesting. So for you to know from a component which view you're on, it's so funny because like I could put a view here and it makes sense to me. And then, but when I navigate to the dashboard, I'm not going to give it the view, right? I'm just going to say I want the dashboard, and then the get current view is the one that actually creates that view. But then when I create the view, I want to keep dashboard so that I can check in the components, which view am I on? But I don't want like sub view or dinner, for example, because that's just an argument for creating the instance of the view. So then you have to like pick name and view for, and that's like super, it's a silly thing. I wonder how I would have built this from scratch. Like, again, we had an implementation that doesn't match our current paradigm, and then how would I have just done it from scratch? I think like you kind of need two of them. Like you have view arguments. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you kind of have, yeah, wait a minute. You have params, and then you have, the view. Yeah, you know what? I think that's how you think about it. Yeah, I think that makes more sense because now the so you would have, do we have a navigation? View params would be view omit view. Yeah, but then you have, this is so weird. Why is this so difficult? Because you literally have two of them. You have dashboard, and then you have navigate dashboard, which is like this, which is weird. There's something I'm missing here. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be. Like, I want to be able to push a dashboard or whatever with certain arguments, and that's going to lead to us creating, oh, sorry, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, now I think I know what I'm doing wrong. These are the actual views. View stack. So this should be, yeah, sorry. I think I see what I'm doing wrong now. Because I was like, the previous view stack was just the arguments, but this shouldn't be just the arguments. This should be the view, of course. So current here would be, or let's call it name. So the view stack should now be, come on, this is silly. Of course, view, create dashboard. We don't need this. Well, do we need this? Yeah, I still think we need this, but what we're gonna do is, no, we don't need this. Sorry, come on. So I can't believe this. So get current is just, what the hell? Return view stack. We return the latest view. Why is the name working? Oh, sorry. This is stupid. So this is going to be omit view views. We're not going to pass the actual view when we replace and do whatever, but we are going to pass everything else that's related to the view. And then here we're going to actually switch. I guess we should have a create view. It even understood it here. So sorry. Yeah, and this needs to be reactive. Okay. That was a bit silly. The whole thing is like, it was all designed to be like this description of what view it was. But it isn't anymore. Like a view now is the name of the view and the actual, like the actual view. And then we just create them. But the point is, like, we don't have anything called like open dashboard because we have this navigation stack. So you could have argued that you would actually have like open dashboard and then you would have something called replace as an argument. Maybe that would have been better. Because not all of them can actually replace either. Why do I replace? I can't remember why I do that. Yeah, and of course this should be create view name dashboard. Yeah, this is how it and then we can like let's see, views, export type, view params would then be omit view So this will be view params. View params. Do we have view params here? So you're passing view params, and then you create the view. What's interesting though is that in the actual view, you don't want the view params, which is, I find is the silly thing here. That is the silly thing here. So that's why I would much rather have like open dashboard. And then you would have like an option to replace it. Because then what you can do is you type the params with the specific method. So like open dashboard doesn't take anything. Why do I have replace? Where the hell do I actually call replace? Like if I go here and go back, that's popping. Where do I actually replace? I can't remember. Is it when you edit maybe? Yeah, I can't remember why I replace. Like, don't you always navigate backwards and forwards? Or forwards and backwards? Weird. But yeah, so this would be... You would rather do it like this. I think that's much better. Because then you don't have these like view params. You rather have a view and then you have open dashboard. It's just like this. And then if it's like edit to do, well, I guess we can just write dashboard, edit to do. Then you have to do DTO that you might pass in. And then you don't have to care about that. But then you have view stack, push, create view, edit to do. Why is this complaining? Oh, sorry, I call it dashboard. Maybe we should even call it navigation. Yeah, and back. Let's call it navigation. Rename, create navigation. Can still have view, but this is not going to be... Yeah, sorry. So now you don't do this anymore. What we do now is we don't even have create view. We just have push. Do you wonder what replace is? Like, why don't we want to... Yeah, interesting. Back. This will be navigation. And this will be navigation. Now this could be called views. Create dashboard. This makes a lot more sense to me. This is what I wanted to build. I can't believe it. Like, we have a navigation of a view stack where we want to open different views with different arguments. And we do that by simply exposing specific methods for those arguments. And then we push a view with a name and the actual view. So when you pop something, like we have the views cached, right? So you don't create the view when you navigate back. That's the whole point. They still hang around. Oh my God, it was so simple. That's silly. That's super silly. Anyways, yeah, that's the thing. Like, we're trying to explore. I don't know. I feel a bit confused by what my intention is with the stream. Because I was, in my mind, I was thinking, oh yeah, let's work with UI and we implement the state and then we'll see it in the UI. And that was kind of the iteration. But we kind of have to get past like the initial state of the app. And it's a lot of like, I wish I'd done it from scratch. I shouldn't have been copying these things over. We should have just been looking at the UI. Oh my God, that's what we should have done. We should have been looking at the original app, and then we should have just gone in here, created all the new concepts, and then we could copy code from the old one. That's what we should have done. Instead of like bringing in the code from the old one and refactor it. It's been super confusing, I think. Yeah. So let's call it use navigation. Navigation. So if we want to use the dashboard, we just say if the current navigation is not that, or we return the navigation current view. Oh, what are you complaining about? Oh, sorry. This should be a view. Sorry. So yeah, you can use like the only difference between having a context provider is that you would use like const family scrum. Family scrum would have been use context, right? Family scrum context. That's the only difference here. But you would still do the same thing. Yeah. And the point now is that from any component, you can use these. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Is like when you have these explicit states, you can no longer consume from a root, right? Because you're not exposing like this singular representation of state from the root. You're correctly organizing your state by like the actual state the application is in, but from a consumption standpoint, it means that in this case, every single nested component would have to check: are we authenticated? Are we in the correct view? And maybe there's another state for that specific component. And that component might be like 3 levels nested components. And every single component needs to make these checks to verify that it's actually in the correct state, which is silly, but it's correct. As opposed to having like a structure where you have like we just have a state tree that has like the dashboard, it has edit to do, like it just has all the views active at any point in time. But then you just flip like what you're currently viewing. And maybe that's a much better concept. Where you, but at this, yeah, but even if we did that, you would still, even if we did that, you would still just have the session. That is literally the, like you can't access anything unless you're actually authenticated. And then you can say, oh, but if that's the case, does it even mean that the app is running without the authentication? So then you could say like, this would be like use app, for example. This is very interesting. Like I haven't looked at it from this perspective. Like doing these explicit states and state machines, like what does it mean for consumption? And should you try to make consumption with less friction? And for this app, it's perfectly fine that every single view in the app is instantiated immediately, and you just flip between them instead of having this navigation stack. Like you don't even have back, right? You just you have the checklist open, like that state is available, shopping list, everything's available. That's kind of the experience I really want for the app as well. But maybe it lazy loads the state within for each view. And then there is no push and pop. There's only current view. That probably makes a lot more sense for this app. And then what you would have here is like you would just have use family scrum. But since you only can use it in a valid session, well, I guess you wouldn't do use family scrum, but you would like use, like you would do use session, and then you would do use authenticated session or something. It doesn't matter. Some hook that represents the rest of the application when you're authenticated. I would simplify the hell out of it. But what does it mean if that wasn't the case? Like, what if you actually wanted to have... Well, yeah. But this is a very specific concept. Like, in an app where you're navigating between different pages, you don't necessarily want to instantiate all the pages. But when you've instantiated a page, you want to keep that page around to make the navigation super fast. And you want to keep the state of that page and everything. Like that is what makes apps feel slow. It's when you're flipping between views, because apps instantiate views as you ask for them instead of just instantiating all of them. Like not instantiating them as in the actual component tree, but instantiating the state for them. Yeah. Yeah, because I've reflected on this many times, like playing around these state machines. Is it really only the session that we care about? Like, is that the thing that should be explicit? Are you authenticated or not? And if you are authenticated, then run with it. Yeah, because the way I would organize this with, yeah, I think we're going at this all wrong. I shouldn't have refactored it. We should have done it from scratch. Damn it. Because it would literally just be like the app, and it would have a dashboard, it would have dinners, it would have checklists, it would have properties related to each of the collections, keeping them in sync, like the actual data, all of that stuff. So it would just be a tree. Like all of this stuff doesn't really matter for this app. And what you can rather do, like if you really wanna have like, okay, so thinking about this navigation, like in this app, it's perfectly fine to initiate the state of all, because I want all the data to be here and everything. It's just what are you currently looking at? That's the only thing that matters. But what if you wanted to lazily instantiate certain views, and maybe you wanted to do some data fetching related to that? Like you kind of want to suspend the view in some sense. That's very interesting. So what you could do then instead is that you still have like this root object that has like whatever data is there, and you would have your views, but then you can make your views a promise. So by default, they are like pending promises. But when you change to like the current view, it being the dashboard or whatever, then it would trigger the promise to resolve. And from that point on, it's resolved. So when you move back to that view, everything's fine again. That will be really cool. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do about this. I think we're going to do what I said, like do the actual right thing. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete navigation. Ugh. And what we're going to do, we're going to have use the old code as reference. Let's remove this. So session. Yeah, and then we're rather going to do, what's family scrum? Yeah, we're going to flip this. So the session is at the root, and then we're going to do create family scrum. And this is not going to have anything at the moment. Export type family scrum. Oh my god. So authenticated, that will be like family scrum. Authenticated should be family scrum. That will be family scrum. Cool. Yes, and then here we would have create session. We don't really need to use session. And then we have use family scrum. Family scrum. Okay, we can have use session, like const use session just for fun. It's just a session. Like so. Yeah. You are not authenticated. This is what we should have done from the beginning. like we have a session and we guard that with a state machine. That makes sense. But then we have family scrum, and family scrum will just have, we're just going to do like to-dos. What do we have? Events. Like this is all the data. And then we have dashboard, where we create the dashboard. Then we have like planning, to-dos, whatever, planning, to-dos, something like that. And then we just have current view. It's like dashboard. Yeah, or it will be like a getter of like what's the current view. Like dashboard, and then view would be get view. We have views, and then get view would be return, and then yeah, this current view. Anyway, so sorry, family scrum would then be key of views. Something like that. So this looks more like what you would normally think about with a state tree. So this app just wants to enable everything, all the data, and then there are certain views. Yeah. And then, for example, within so plan next week has like to-dos and dinners. So we have like plan next week, and then it has its own views, right? It's all coming back to me now. Plan next week. Yeah, and then yeah, and here we would have like open dashboard or go to dashboard or whatever. Yeah. Or like open view, go to view. And this would also be key of views. But then, yeah, how will we solve that? So when I go to like edit to do, for example. Yeah, sorry. So as an example, I would have edit to do. And then I would say this dot current view equals edit to do. But first I would say this dot views edit to do equals create. Like if I actually want to recreate that view every time, then I can just do that. Yeah, exactly. So here I will get it to do. I choose to recreate the view because I want it to be like, I don't want to update that view when I edit it to do. It should be in the context of the current to do I'm editing. And then I could still have navigation here, but it's based on actually having these views. Anyways, I need to stop. I need to get some work done. But this is definitely more how I thought about it initially. Yeah. So next time we're just gonna look at like exactly like the documentation says. Like when you look at a piece of UI, you have a mental model, right? Of what state is behind this. God damn it, why didn't I do that right away? Anyways, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna look at the actual UI and we're gonna look at, okay, what state do we actually need there? And then we're gonna describe it and then implement it. Yeah. And then if there's some specific code we need from the old code, we're going to grab it, but we're not going to refactor it. That's just silly. Okay. Yeah, thanks for following along. Sorry for all the confusion. I was very confused myself. I wasn't sure how to, well, I thought I knew how to approach this, but we're going to go at it again in a proper way. Cool. Thanks for, yeah, whatever. Bye.